Hello again, everyone. Welcome back. I am Nicodemus Kane. Today is June the 14th of 2022. When is this Juneteenth thing supposed to happen? I have no idea. You all know what I'm talking about. I have no idea. Anyways, just that, national holiday just absolutely popped up out of nowhere. We were talking about it the other day. And Sunday, June 19th, 619. Okay. Public holiday date is June 20th, 620. Okay. So anyways, just popped up out of nowhere. But anyways, today is June 14th of 2022. The world just keeps on trucking and falling apart, doesn't it? Well, as we have been reading about in Isaiah, a nation that does not listen to the Father falls apart. Speaking of the Father, has anyone noticed that Father's Day is becoming Dad Day? Or is that just me? Is that just me? There's just been so many people that have just been calling it Dad's Day or Dad Day. Is that just me? I mean, it's very weird. It's very strange. Father's Day and Mother's Day are basically just days to. There's probably some secret hidden ritual meaning to them, but they're pretty much there just to, sell cards and flowers, basically. But I've just noticed that, Bible says, "Call no man father on this world, but the Father that is in heaven." You have the man that conceived you, which is your father. That is not your Father in heaven. That is your dad. I just think it's weird that they are taking the word father away from Father's Day, calling it Dad's Day. Yet we still call it Mother's Day. So weird. But that's if you see with eyes that are open, you know that they worship the feminine, because that's just the way evil is. Anyways, enough about the nonsense of the world. Let's focus on the Word of God today. Isaiah chapter 2. And again, we are going to read until we get to the paragraph breaks. And we may talk about the things that we read. I'm going to try not to interrupt myself as much as possible, because I said yesterday that you need to hear the whole thing first instead of getting commentary on every single little thing. And I would rather stop at a point to where you can digest what you just heard, instead of, talking about every little thing. There's a lot of YouTubers, several of them that I could probably point out by name, but there's a lot of them that will, they'll tell you, "Oh, we're going to watch this video from such and such," and they let it run for, 2 minutes. No, not even 2 minutes, 20 seconds. They let it run for about 20 seconds, maybe even not even that, just enough for whoever they're talking about to get one sentence out. And then they will add 5 minutes of commentary. And you've already forgotten what the guy on the video was saying. And then they'll let it play for another 10 seconds and then add another 5 minutes of commentary. And it's that fractional, divisions that you don't get the message. You don't get to really hear what was first said, and then you lose the meaning of what they were trying to put in between. And I hate that stuff. I really do. So I'm going to try not to be like that. We're going to try to get the overall message of what either the verse or the whole thing itself says, and then we're going to talk about it. Because again, the way we used to do with the Psalms, I used to read the whole Psalm out, and then we had to go through it step by step by step, and that was a little bit more for me than I want to do it. I think that we can pull out little things, Also, whenever Isaiah starts talking about specific countries and specific places and nations, a lot of that stuff we just don't need to, we don't need to worry about so much. I mean, we could look it up and we can talk about it, but just read the chapter, man. It's all I can hear everybody say. Just read the chapter. Just read it. All three of you. All right. Isaiah chapter 2. The word that Isaiah the son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days. Okay. Already. And it shall come to pass in the last days. This is prophecy. So we're going to reread that again. So keep an ear out. This is prophecy. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come ye, and let us walk into the light of the Lord. All right, and then there's a paragraph break right at verse 6. So what's going on here? And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. So many people want to keep pointing out and saying, oh, this is the last days. This is the end times. This is the end time. This is it. This is where everything is going to, everything's going to fall apart. But there are certain things that have not happened yet. And this is something that I hate pointing out. But I like to think that, maybe there's something that some of us are seeing that others aren't. It shall come to pass in the last days that the house of the Lord shall be established in the mountains, in the high mountains. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Now this is saying that the house of God will be established in the mountains, and more than likely in Jerusalem, which is one of the things people say whenever the third temple gets built, everything falls apart, yada, yada, yada. Some people have said that, oh, it's already happened. Well, 70 years ago, they reestablished Jerusalem. Did they? Did they? Really? Just because somebody says something, just because a man says something, doesn't mean it's true. Now, are we going to say that the city of Jerusalem, who just celebrated the world's biggest pride festival, that's where God's word is going to come out from? That's where the people are going to say, come to the house of the God of Jacob, and we will teach us, and we will walk in his paths, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths? Is that your sign? Is that your sign that Jerusalem was established, that the house of God was established in the mountains, and that the word of God is coming out of that place? The biggest pride festival in the world. We need to rethink what's going on here. We need to rethink what's going on here. I'm not going to say anything is right or wrong, but all signs point to the place where everybody says we should be looking, and we should be throwing all of our money and giving all of our power to, and helping them to reestablish a temple or whatever, may not be the right place. It's either that or these just aren't the last days. Things are supposed to get a whole lot worse before the end times. They're pretty bad now. We can see it. It's pretty much Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, it's pretty bad. These were supposed to be the days of Noah that we're looking for. And there are very specific markers that are supposed to happen. Things are supposed to be established. Things are supposed to happen before those end times. Now, the enemy does not play fair. They can make things look like the end times in order to confuse and deceive the elect, in order to make you think that it's the end times, in order to make you think that God is coming soon, in order to make you think that all you need to do is sit on your hands and pray and do nothing because God is coming soon. Do you see? I've been preaching this for a while now, that what we know may not be true. I mean, it's entirely possible that we live in the season of evil that God says is supposed to happen after Christ comes back the first time and everything falls apart. And then there's a short season where the devil gets to run around free before God comes back and destroys the wicked. That's entirely possible. You look around and you just see evil building more and more and more. What I don't see is a place that is established in the mountains and the hills, plus, next line, and he shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. They shall take all of their weapons and get rid of them. Why? Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. So we're supposed to have peace. Peace and prosperity, because prosperity means that you have food, you have farms, you have places where you can build all this food for people, because you're going to need as much food as you possibly can for people. It's prosperity. Peace and prosperity is supposed to flow out of Jerusalem. That's not happening. Are these last days? I don't think so. That's just me. I think that we have been tricked. I think that it is entirely possible what we are told was Jerusalem was not. That there is another place. Whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in America, whether it's in South America. Some people have said it's in Africa. I don't know. I can't say that for certain, because there's a lot of conflicting, I don't want to say evidence, but a lot of conflicting stories. Let's put it that way. I think the evil men of this world can read the Bible just as well as we can. And they know it better than we do, because Satan was there when the books were written. Satan was there when the plans were put out. Evil doesn't play fair. And evil will use every trick in the book in order to get us to believe in one thing, and then harm us because we are ignorant. So we have to beware. We have to be as wise as serpents and watch and listen to God. Listen to what He says, not what man says. Man says these things have been established. God says these things have not been established yet. The Word of God says these things have not been established yet. We have to pay attention. We have to read our Bibles. We have to understand what's going on. Could I be wrong? Sure. I've said that ever since I started this. I could be wrong because I'm not the best Bible scholar in the world. I'm just a guy that finally sat down, listened to the Bible 3 times through on an audio, and then I started reading it. I started hearing that everything we were told is not right. So we have to understand it better than this. We have to understand what's going on better than this. Put it into full context. Not just use only the Bible. There's guys out there that will say, all I ever need is the Bible. The Bible is the only truth I ever need. That's fine. That's cool. If you want to use the Bible as the only truth you ever need, that's cool. But you need to read other stuff. I've heard guys that have said, I don't need to read the books that the evil men of this world have written. I don't need to learn their tricks. God will tell me. Okay, that's fine. That's great. That's cool. I'm glad that you have that relationship with God. For the rest of us, to be wise as a serpent means that we need to know their tricks, which means we need to read about their tricks. We don't have to follow their books. We don't have to follow what they say. We just have to understand what it is that they do, what their tricks are. Symbology, gematria, we have to know these things. Because without these things, you cannot know the full truth. I'm not saying that we have to know every single little thing that happens in the world. We don't need to know that. We just need to know the devil's tricks. We need to know the devil's tricks so that we will not fall into the snares, into the traps that the devil has laid for us. So we have to read our Bibles. That has to be the foundation. But we have to go outside of it. You have to go outside of it. There are so many things inside the Bible that, especially King James, there's been a lot of talk. Some of the guys that I read on Twitter, there's been a lot of talk about how bad the King James is, and about, how could you follow such a book? How could people be King James only, and blah 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 blah, blah and all this stuff. And it's like, all I can think of is, anyone that's following any one Bible and then sticks to that, they're not doing themselves justice. Now, I'm not going with translations after this because I've read the translations after this, and, well, I've compared the translations after this. Let's put it that way. I haven't read them. I've compared the translations after this. And so many of the translations add and subtract to the word. They don't translate so much as they add and subtract words. They add and subtract meanings and values. And I found just having a Strong's Concordance, just finding the meaning of the words, that's all you need. Especially when it comes to King James. Because the people that wrote the King James were not, I'm going to say they're not your friends. God left enough of His Word in His Bible so that we would be able to understand. But you still need a Strong's Concordance in order to be able to decipher what certain words mean. You still need to be able to understand what is hidden behind the words. Because English, again, I've said this before, English was a language was made only to confound the people. We have too many words that are made up of too many other words that are meant to harm. And Old English is the worst. It is the absolute worst. So we have to get back to the source. We have to get back to something better. You have to know what you're reading. Get off that soapbox for a while. Let's get back to it. Verse 6. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east, and are soothsayers, like the Philistines. And they please themselves in the children of strangers. I'm looking that one up. The land also is full of silver and gold. Neither is there any end of their treasures. Their land is also full of horses. Neither is there any end of their chariots. Their land also is full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands, that which their own fingers have made. And the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself. Therefore forgive them not. Okay. Oof. All right. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east. Because they be replenished from the east, and are soothsayers, like the Philistines. We are not supposed to have any kind of divination whatsoever. No magic, no astrology, no reading of stones, no reading of futures, none of that stuff. God said that stuff is forbidden. But the people of the house of Jacob are bringing in people from the east, and they are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. God, that just sounds weird, knowing what we know now. And they please themselves. Please. What? A primitive root, to clap the hands. By implication of satisfaction, to be enough. By implication of excess, to vomit. What? To cause to clap, to splash, throw up. Chastise, clap, to slap. And they slap themselves, they please themselves. In the children, child, offspring, youth, it is masculine. Young men, they please themselves in the young men of strangers. That's weird. Knowing what we know now about the perversions of men. That may not be what that is, but I'll tell you what, that's can't take anything for granted anymore. In the last days, God will establish himself on the mountains in Jerusalem, in Zion, and Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And everybody will have peace. But because the house of Jacob has not walked in that light before those last days, God has forsaken them. They are replenished from the east, and are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. Their land also is full of silver and gold. Same silver and gold that they use to deck the trees. Neither is there any end of their treasures, because they store their treasures up instead of giving it out. Their land is also full of horses. Neither is there any end of their chariots, because the house of Jacob became exactly the way that the Egyptians were. Their land also is full of idols, which you are not supposed to worship. They worship the work of their own hands, because anything that man makes is not of God. That which their own fingers have made, and the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself. Therefore forgive them not. Verse 10. Enter into the rock, and hide thee in the dust, for fear of the Lord, for the glory of his majesty. There's something in Revelations, and actually it even says it right here, Revelation 6:15, where they talk about the evil ones, the wicked men, whenever the end time comes, because we're still talking about the end times. When it comes that evil men will run to the mountains and hide themselves in caves and pull rocks over them and say, do not hurt us. Revelation 6:15, and the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Every bondman and every free man. So everybody that is left, does that include the remnant? Makes you wonder. Everyone hid themselves in the rocks and the mountains. Is that stuff happening yet? That's going to be at the very end. That's going to be the last stuff that happens, because before this, we're talking about the stars of heaven falling to earth, and we're talking about, heaven departing as a scroll, and every mountain and island moved out of its place. And again, I say that may have possibly happened. We don't know. We don't know. The stars of the earth have not fallen yet. A lot of them have, but I don't know. There's things that haven't happened, and it's strange. There was some kind of great reset, and I've talked about this before. Something happened in the mid-1800s that caused everything to change, because all of our history just suddenly popped up out of nowhere in the 1800s. Everything. And anything before that is extremely suspect, because a lot of the paintings have been changed, a lot of the books have been changed. So we don't know, but something big happened. I've talked about this one for a while. Something big happened, and we need to find the truth about that. But what kind of happened is very similar to what it says will happen before the season of Satan, before that, short season where they will allow Satan to run rampant on the world. We talk about the great Tartarian kingdom, how beautiful it was, how amazing it was, and then out of the blue it disappeared. Something happened. Everything got covered in mud. Everything got kind of buried and put away. Mountains and islands and all this kind of stuff moved. Everything changed. And then it suddenly evil abounded everywhere, and it slowly built. I don't know. I'm just throwing that concept out there because a lot of people have done that. A lot of people have already said, well, we've already passed the the Great Tribulation. We're into we're into something else. It's possible. We don't know. Yeah. You look at, I was actually, yesterday, the startup screen for my laptop was, I don't know if it was the Parthenon or something else. You look at those old Greek buildings, and you hear them say, well, that was just because they fell apart. That was just because people just left them in disrepair, and they just slowly fell apart, and everybody walked away. That's the biggest honking ass lie I've ever heard in my life. They didn't just fall into disrepair. because there would have been people still living there. Just because the Greeks were taken over by the Romans doesn't mean that there weren't Greeks that were still living there. Those buildings fell down because there was something that happened. Something big that happened. And whatever it was really caused these buildings to fall apart. And a lot of these buildings that we see now, a lot of these Greek buildings, the ruins, they're already put back together. They've already spent 100+ years putting these buildings back together. So actually, they're far more put together than they were. Not only that, but whenever you hear about how they found these buildings, they had to dig these buildings out of the dirt. Some of these buildings were submerged underneath the dirt. You hear about the amphitheaters. There's one of the amphitheaters in Greece that was completely covered. It's a, 75, 100-foot deep amphitheater that was buried in dirt. That's a thing. This is why the mud flood stuff, it matters. This is why it matters. And I don't believe that was 1,000 years ago. I really don't. Again, whenever the Romans took over these places, they didn't just move everybody out. They didn't just say, oh, hey, everybody's going to come with us, and we're just going to leave all this stuff here, and we're just going to let it rot. No. Romans would have been smarter than that. They would have taken over the cities. They would have kept the cities. They would have kept the people in the cities. Why would they have come in, and especially the big ones, like Athens? Why would they have come in and taken all those people out of Athens, a city that was supposedly as big as it was, take everybody out of that city just to let the city rot? Not only that, but nobody touched that city within 1,000 years? Your history doesn't make sense. Wake up. Open your eyes to what they're telling you and really listen. They had to dig these things out of the earth. When they dug them out of the earth, I remember when I was a kid, they dug them out of the earth. They were saying something about the buildings, the rocks and stuff were covered in like a black soot. Like, they had been set on fire or something. Something happened to them. And so they said, well, it was just a big war. That's all it was. There was a war and they tore all these things down, or they just let these fires burn, or blah, 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 whatever it was. What if it was a great cataclysm? What if it was the great cataclysm that we're saying is, supposed to happen? Something happened. Something happened, and historians are lying to us. Or they are just as blind as everybody else. I don't know. But there was something to it. I just saw that. I got hair in my mouth. I'm sorry. I just saw that the other day, and I really looked at it for the first time, and I was like, man, it doesn't look like it just fell into disrepair. Because that's what they tell us. They tell us that it just fell into disrepair, nobody cared, and everybody just left it the way it was. And it just kind of basically fell apart, fell over, and that was it. It was dead. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. From a strategic standpoint, from a military standpoint, from a standpoint of the Romans taking over, the Romans, they just weren't that type, The biggest problem with the Romans, I think that what I have, hold on, I can't get it out. I think I have a hair stuck between my teeth is what's going on. Sorry if you guys got to hear me running my tongue inside of my mouth. I got a hair in my teeth, and it keeps hitting my tongue. There. I got it. Rotten little. It's one of my mustache hairs. But, there was no strategic value whatsoever for the Romans. Just leave it like that. The Romans were smarter than that. I'm sure they were. They enjoyed keeping their slaves. They enjoyed keeping their people there. I don't think they would have I don't think they would have pulled the entire population out of a city and just let the city rot. And then it's just like nobody thought, hey, what's this city way over here that's just sitting there? It's like, oh, wait, there was a whole city over here. Let's go check it out. No, come on, no. It's like the pyramids. It's like people knew the pyramids were there. You're going to tell me that the pyramids had sand that covered all the way up to the top of the Sphinx, or the neck of the Sphinx, and the way that somebody found the pyramids, found the Sphinx, was that they just happened to be out in the desert, and then they dug all that sand out? No, man, come on. Listen to what they tell you and really, really think about it. It's just not real. Anyways, I am going way off topic here. We were getting into Revelations, weren't we? So let's get back to it. Verse 10, enter into the rock and hide thee in the dust for fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty. Again, this lines up with Revelations. The lofty looks of man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. The lofty looks shall be humbled, and the haughtiness, the pride of man, shall be bowed down. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty. Isn't that what I just said? Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty mind leadeth to pride goeth before the fall. Pride goeth before the fall, and a haughty mind leadeth to destruction. Somebody said it backwards the other day, and I've just been stuck on it like that. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty. If you've got pride, get rid of it. And upon every one that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. And upon all the cedars of Lebanon, which are the biggest trees in the world, that are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan, which are probably bigger than the trees of Lebanon, and upon all the high mountains, and upon all the hills that are lifted up. By the way, Bashan. Don't ever just skim over the word Bashan. Og of Bashan is a thing. If you hear the word Bashan, you have to understand that everything inside of Bashan was huge. Old world trees, old world food, old world giants. Bashan was something special. If we could ever find Bashan, oh boy. And upon all the high mountains, and upon all the hills that are lifted up, and upon every high tower, and upon every fenced wall, and upon all the ships of Tarshish, and upon all pleasant pictures. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud, and upon the cedars of Lebanon, and upon the high mountains, and upon every high tower, and upon all the ships of Tarshish. Okay, just to make sure you had the context of what all that was. The day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon all of this stuff. All of this stuff that the Bible has actually talked about several times. By the way, also the ships of Tarshish, I think, has something to do with the maritime law, the water people. I think that has something to do with something, because they always talk about that. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. Amen. And the idols he shall utterly abolish, and they shall go into the holes of the rocks, and into the caves of the earth, for fear of the Lord, for the glory of his majesty, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. I'm going to come back to that one. I'm going to put my finger there. And in that day a man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made each one for himself, to worship, to the moles, and to the bats, to go into the clefts of the rocks, and into the tops of the ragged rocks, for fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of? Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of? Come out of Babylon, cease ye from man. Is that what that says? It's amazing how this stuff works. So let's go back to this verse 19. And they shall go into the holes of the rocks, and into the caves of the earth, for fear of the Lord, and for the glory of his majesty, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. So, let's talk a little bit more about why I think that this has already happened. Native Americans, brown-skinned Native Americans, not black-skinned Native Americans, the brown ones, they talk about their history, especially the ones out in the West. They talk about when they came out of the caves, because there was a ancient legend where they were told to go down into the caves by these ant men, these men that were gigantic ants, pretty much. They were pulled down into these caves because there was a great destruction coming on the world. So they were pulled into these caves by these ant people who made them slaves, pretty much. And what happened was they rebelled, or they escaped somehow through these caves, these cave systems. And they came back out. And when they came back out, the whole world was replenished, because it was, the world had fallen apart. It was like supposedly great earthquakes and, fire from the sky and all this stuff. It wasn't the Great Flood. These guys were, this was after the Great Flood. Yes, the Indians, the Native Americans, have their own Great Flood myth. It's actually pretty crazy. You listen to some of the Native American flood myths, and they are almost step by step with Noah. Talk about 8 people going inside of a cube that floated on water. That when they landed, the patriarch went out and planted seeds. It's one of where the legend of Johnny Appleseed comes from. It's of a lone man going out and replanting seeds. But the Native Americans, they talk about being brought into these caves to ride out the end of the world. And when they came out into the world, everything was green and perfect and beautiful. They spent enough time down there that it was like a generation or two. I don't know. Very similar to the Israelites going out into the wilderness and then finding, very similar. It's weird when you listen to them. But they came out of these caves, and according to the Native Americans, when people asked them about the Indian mounds, the supposed Indian burial mounds, they asked them about the pictures, the Great Snake Mound, and all this other kind of stuff that all these big huge buildings, the pyramids in Illinois, all these different places. When the Native Americans were asked about these things, who built them, they said they were here when we got here. When they came out. I cannot remember. It's been a long time. It's been probably about 4 years. Probably about 4 years since I heard this stuff. Maybe 3 years. Yeah, but I was really getting into Indian myths, Native American myths, Native American legends, how they connect with Hebrew legends, because I was getting onto that line of how Hebrew cultures were here way before, the white colonials, about all this stuff. And I was really getting into it, and I was listening to these old tales. I was listening to actual, I don't want to say actual, these guys that claim that they were Native Americans. They were telling these stories, and they were talking about, was a woman, I can't remember the woman's name. She was on some talk show. It was a real easy name too. Starlight something or other. She had one of those kinds of names. But she was writing a book about these myths and legends. This was about 2019. This was right before YouTube decided to take every video of everything down ever. This was right before that. But this woman was writing a book going around to all these different Native American tribes. And because she was Native, because she was half Native or something, she was able to get in and talk to the elders. And she was asking the elders directly. And she was saying a lot of them wouldn't talk to her. A lot of them don't want to talk about the giants. A lot of them don't want to talk about the where they came from. A lot of them don't want to talk about the flood. A lot of them don't talk about this and that. But she said that she was able to get some of them candidly to speak on this stuff. Maybe it was like the children of the elders. I don't know what it was. But they were telling her the stories that they were told. Stories that, we'd never heard of before. They were talking, like I said, they were talking about these caves and these ant people and details about the floods and details about all these different, where the mounds came from and all this stuff. And it was lining up with what I was researching at the time. The whole America is Egypt. There were 10 million black people that were inside of America that almost every single one of them called themselves Native. You talk to, or you listen to, well, hell, I even talked to them too. I've had so many of them, so many black people I knew in Florida, where they used to say that they were descendants of some Native American tribe. And that's something that a lot of people, a lot of historians want you to forget. They want you to believe that, it's only the brown-skinned Indians. That's all you ever need to worry about. You don't need to ever worry about any black-skinned Native Americans ever. That never happened. Don't close your eyes. It's okay. Of course, then again, they also want you to forget that brown-skinned Native Americans owned white people. So they want you to forget that too. Whatever. Don't just look away. It's okay. Look away. But they talk about being descendants of Native American tribes. They talk about their grandparents or their great-grandparents were part of these tribes. And, whenever I talk about UBTV, where he talks about America is Egypt, the old Babylon. We were talking about this at the lunch, the Flat Earth meetup that we had on Sunday. I was talking about, Dane Calloway, where he was saying that slavery might not even be a thing, that there were 10 million black people that were already in America before anybody ever brought anybody over on a ship, if that even exists. We were talking about UBTV, where he goes through and he talks about all these different places in America that line up with all these biblical references. There was the story the story that I remember hearing, and I could not ever go back and find it since, was there could be that they unearthed these grain stores out in the West. I don't remember if it was Colorado or New Mexico. I don't remember where it was. But they unearthed these grain stores. And what they found was there were writings, cave drawings, other things, different things that they found with these grain stores, talking about a specific man that had ordered all of the grain in this country, or wherever it was, to store up all the grain because there was a famine coming. And he was a great man. He was a great man that was not of the people that were there at the time. He was a foreigner. But he was brought down, given a high place, and he was given the rights to be able to tell everyone to store up food, because he knew that there was a famine coming, a great famine coming, and the famine lasted for 10 years. But they were able to survive because this great man was able to know in advance that he needed to store up food, which was very similar to, let me see, was it Daniel? Nope, it was Joseph. I keep getting the two mixed up. I get the two mixed up all the time. Daniel, Joseph. I don't know why, but I do. But it was Joseph. It was a foreigner from a different land, that came in, was put in place to store up the food so that they could last through this famine. And there were these storehouses that had grain in them. They still had grain on the bottom of them, but they were built specifically to hold food because they knew that there was a famine coming. And these stories were part of the Native American legends that, there was a guy that had stored up food so that they could be ready for a famine. But they found these storehouses, and I can't find that video. I cannot find that video to save my life. It's one of those videos that I think YouTube just scratched off the face of the earth. And but it was one of those that lends to the, there's something else going on here. There's something else going on. That is a Hebrew story. That is a biblical story that happened inside of the United States. What's that all about? Happened inside of Amaruka. So, you got that going too. The land of the plumed serpent. We talked about that as well. The land of the plumed serpent, Amaruka. Good old Amaru. So, you take it as it is. The thing about all this stuff is you have to put it all together, and you have to try to figure out this puzzle piece, because this puzzle piece. Do you hear me? My granddaughter calls it a puzzle piece. We were actually talking about it the other day. We were talking about certain words that she uses. Certain words that she uses wrong, but it's something that we've adopted for her because, it's just an endearing thing. So she always says puzzle piece whenever she's talking about building a puzzle, because she has a bunch of these little, like 30, 40 piece puzzles that she puts together. And one of the things we said was, it's going to really suck whenever she starts just saying puzzle. She gonna start saying puzzle all the time, and we're gonna lose puzzle piece, and it's just gonna be so sad. She still calls trains train station. It's, one of those types of things. She's 3. What do you want? We don't want to correct her because it's cute. It's endearing. She's breaking out of it, though. She's starting to, like I said, there's other words that she's starting to get rid of, and eventually she's just going to wind up finding out the truth, and But for now, it's cute. We love it. It's cute. Anyways, but that's all part of the puzzle that you have to put together, and you have to fit all this stuff together, and you find out that most times, even though it's a myth or it's somebody that's, you may not be able to completely believe or you may not be able to completely put together, they fit. And it's scary a little bit how they fit. I mean, somebody told me somewhere along the line that I should not worry about what's happening in the world. Even the Bible itself says, do not try to follow the history of the world. Do not try to follow the things of this world. Do not try to follow the values of this, whatever. And that's fine. That's fine. I don't need that stuff anymore. One of the things I asked for whenever I was coming into this was wisdom. And God pointed all this stuff out to me because I needed that in order to be able to break my brain of what I had before. I needed him to tell me all of this stuff that I've either kind of heard in the past or, I've heard rumors about or stuff I've thought about. All of this stuff kind of connects because I've heard all this stuff before. When I was a kid, I used to look at those stupid tabloids. I used to look at those crazy, the books that they used to put out about, silly or crazy stories that you hear or different legends, stuff like that. I read tons of those when I was a kid. And all that stuff now, whenever I go back and look at it, I'm like, oh man, it matches up. That's crazy. So there's a lot of people out there that will say, well, I don't have to worry about that stuff. And that's cool. You don't have to worry about it. It's fine. But you can use it to deepen your understanding of the Bible, of what's coming, what's happened. It will help you break out of the lies. You don't have to follow it, you don't have to follow it religiously and get stuck into it. You just, it helps create that basis. God talks about these places. He talks about these cities. He talks about these different areas of the world. And if you didn't know anything about the world, you wouldn't know what this stuff meant. What are the cedars of Lebanon? What does that even mean? Lebanon has cedars? So what? Big deal. Okay, unless you looked at it, you find out that Lebanon, their flag, has a big tree on it. The cedars of Lebanon, they are known for their trees. They're big, huge trees. The cedars of Lebanon get up to about 120 to 140 feet. Some people say they get bigger than that. Some people have said in the past they were way bigger than that. The giants in the Bible were as big as the cedars of Lebanon. But you wouldn't have known that unless you would have gone outside the Bible. The oaks of Bashan. Why is that such a big deal? Bashan. What's even Bashan? There's not even a place called Bashan anymore. What is Bashan? The oaks of Bashan, as talked about in the Bible, were giants. Giant trees. One bundle of grapes hung on a stick carried between two men. These men weren't tiny. We're not talking about Lilliputians or anything. We're talking about two men that had to carry one bundle of grapes on a stick between them. Think about it. It was the land of milk and honey. Everything that was in Bashan was bigger and better and beautiful. Some people say it was the Garden of Eden. I don't know. I'm not going to make that connection. But Og of Bashan is mentioned so many times in the Bible that there was something to it. Bashan was a place that created giants. They created giant food. They created giant trees. The oaks of Bashan, they talk about. There's a Jewish myth where they talk about it wasn't the staff of Moses, it was something else that was made from the oaks of Bashan. I cannot remember what it is now. It's been a while. I don't know. I could be wrong. Anyways, the ships of Tarshish. What are the ships of Tarshish? They were grand, huge ships. People were able to sail around the world before the 1400s. I'm sorry, but that's where your history books lie. You know, they talk about the Vikings coming over to North America, and it's funny, they talk about the Vikings coming over to North America, and they landed, and then they decided, well, we'll just go back. We don't need to worry about any of this stuff anymore. What? Come on, man. They talk about these big, huge... Well, we were watching some Egyptian thing. I gotta check my time. I'm sure we're over an hour. Yep, we were over an hour. I was watching some Egyptian thing. Or something. And it was a big, huge monster ship. I don't remember what exactly it was. And every time I see them, I'm like, you're telling me that thing can't cross an ocean? Give me a break. Give me a break. The people in the old world were able to go anywhere and everywhere they damn well wanted to. Because they were able to. Because the ships that they had, the designs that they had, the food that they were able to put up with all the slave labor that they had, they could go anywhere, anywhen. Not only that, but there were land bridges everywhere. I've talked about this. The waters have risen. Before the waters had risen, there were land bridges all over the place. You could walk from Europe to Canada probably within a couple days. Florida actually connected down to Mexico at one point in time. The entirety of the southeastern sea, Australia, all the islands that go through the Samoan Islands, all those, I don't remember exactly what it was out there. All of those were connected. And there was a land bridge that went from Australia to South America. All of it was connected. Every single last bit of it. So, when they tell you that, oh, we decided that we were going to suddenly start sailing ships back in the 1400s, don't listen to the lies. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. These people were able to go everywhere. But I saw that the other day. We were talking about that. And I every time I see a ship, an Egyptian ship, you know, one of the big, huge monster cruisers, the only thing I can think of is they were sailing everywhere. And no, it wasn't because they thought the earth was flat and they were going to fall off. And no, it's not because they thought that there were monsters in the sea. As a matter of fact, I think some of those big ships were made to kill the monsters in the sea. Talk about Leviathan all the time in the Bible. You talk about these stories that they talk about, these huge monsters that are in the sea. You're telling me that these You're telling me that guys that are sitting on land, that are seeing big, huge monsters in the sea, aren't going to look at it and think, you know what, let's go kill that thing. Man, come on. I know the human being. I know how they think. I spent 45 years in this earth to know how men think. And men are not going to just stand on the side of the beach, see some gigantic monster, and not think, hey, let's go kill it. Let's go try it. Let's go see what's out there. Give me a break. Give me a break. I don't believe it at all. All right. I'm going to stop since I've talked way too much. And, you know, I've gone on for as long as I can. I need to open it back up. I closed my Bible too soon. Man, getting back into this, and it comes back real easy. You know, I was thinking about it the other day, about going back and trying to find some of those old videos, some of that old stuff that I haven't listened to in forever. You know, try to get back into it because I've been out of it for so long. But it's amazing how it all just kind of comes back. It's not perfect by any means, and I got to find those videos. And again, there is a playlist called Most Interesting that I have on the channel that I'm going to start going through all of my liked videos. You don't get to see all my liked videos. I like some weird stuff. I like some stuff that, you know, is not conspiracy related. But I'm going to go back through some of my liked videos, and there's so many liked videos. But I tried to like as much stuff as possible so that I could have it in that list. But I will be, hey baby. Come on in. That's my granddaughter again. But I will be putting that stuff in that playlist so that, you know, I can have it so other people can have it too. So, yeah, I know, that's heavy. Those are my weights. You can't lift those. That's 20 pounds, man. That's heavy. Yeah, well, all right, guys. I'm going to get going. You say bye to the people? Bye, people. Bye, people. All right. God bless everyone. Take care of yourselves. I will talk to you all later.